What's up, guys? Scotty2Hockey here, aka the Average Hockey Fan, once again doing another live stream, testing it out. I got a new borderline set up on my screen. I did schedule an event. I'm hoping this is the live stream that got scheduled. I scheduled it for 8 o'clock here, Newfoundland Standard Time. Hopefully I can get a few people in on the live stream, and when I do, I got some, it's not really big news, but some more disappointing news when it comes to Karl Alzner, guys. Karl Alzner is injured. He got injured at practice, and Noah Juulsen was also sidelined at practice, but he wasn't injured. He had a headache. So Noah Juulsen should be good to go. But Karl Alzner has a groin injury, and he's injured. So far, we have one viewer in the live chat. Hopefully, we can get a few in on the live stream. I did schedule an event for this. It was kind of last minute, so if I can get a few people in here, let's talk about Alzner. Let's talk about the Habs practice. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are here in St. John's, Newfoundland. As a Habs fan, I'm not going to go see them. But they were lined to the gates. Everybody was trying to get tickets to see the Toronto Maple Leafs. But yeah, guys, there's been some reports that says defenseman Noah Juulsen and Karl Alzner weren't on the ice Saturday at Canadiens training camp in Brazil. Coach Claude Julien announced after putting Team A and Team B through practices that Juulsen had a headache when he showed up at the Bell Sports Complex on Saturday morning, while Alzner suffered a groin injury. He suffered it at practice on Friday. Both are listed as day-to-day. So Karl Alzner's injury may not be long-term, but day-to-day in Montreal could end up being a month or two, especially with an older player like that. So let me know what you think, guys. If you can get in on this stream, it'd be great. I'd love to get a few viewers in on this stream. I know my good buddy Talking Habs, Rick's stream ended recently, and he has subscribers of mine. We both have the same amount of subscribers. Not the same amount, but some of the same subscribers. So I wouldn't be surprised if I don't get a lot of people in on this. But if I can get a few people in on the chat and get a few questions, it would be great. What other Habs news is out there? I went through the Habs news today. It says Montreal Canadiens may be in on Julius Honka. Interested in stars Julia Honka. Montreal Canadiens are among teams interested in a trade for Dallas Stars defenseman Julius Honka, according to Sportsnet Eric Engels. As per Engels, the belief is Canadiens would prefer a player for a player trade rather than for a draft pick swap. There's other Habs news too. If I could get a few people in on the live stream, it would be very nice. And thank you to the people who subscribed recently. I really appreciate it. I'm going to see how this stream goes. I'm going to try and do another one, at least get an hour out of it if I can. Last night I did a test run and it turned into an over 2-hour stream with a ton of questions. It was great. So the more the better. I'm going to try and get myself in the view a bit here. Got a new border set up, hoping to get a hockey background soon. I got a beautiful picture of a hockey net on the ice with mountains in the background. Just cannot figure out how to make it my background. But thank you to whoever is viewing this at the moment. Any other interesting Habs news? Let's see what else we got. Juulsen Alzner days today. Apparently Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki have not been given big roles to start camp. It says the Montreal Canadiens finally hit the ice for the first time this season. Training camp got underway on Thursday with players doing medical tests and meeting the media. Yesterday, the 57 players at camp hit the ice for the first time. The players were split into 3 groups to begin camp. Group A and Group B had 13 forwards each, with a group carrying 8 defenders and 3 goaltenders, and Group B having 7 defensemen and 2 netminders. It was only the very first day of players taking the ice, but it is interesting to note the line combinations that were put together after a lengthy offseason of discussing what trios the team will put together. There were many suggestions that rookie Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki could make the team. If they are going to crack the roster, they have a tough road ahead of them. If the lines used at the first skate are any indication, the Habs management team is not going to hand over a big role to either of the rookies. So right here on the Habs Team A lines, Suzuki's on the 3rd line with Hudon and Wheel. And on Team B, Poehling is also on the 3rd line. So they're not getting big roles at camp. Hockey Night in Canada in 3 weeks, Eddie Van Haskell says, I know, I'm absolutely pumped for Hockey Night in Canada. Kind of sad that we're not going to be hearing Bob Cole cover the games. Myself, personally, I'm from St. John's, Newfoundland, so it kind of means something to me to see Bob Cole cover the games. His last game was Montreal versus Toronto. It was absolutely excellent. Ryan Poehling scored a hat trick and scored the game winner. But yes, Hockey Night in Canada very soon. I'm pumped for that. I just can't wait for regular season hockey and preseason hockey as a Habs fan, because there's a lot of interesting prospects out there. Whoever's viewing this, I truly appreciate it. I only scheduled an event 5 minutes ago. If I can get a few people in on this chat, get a few good questions, this should turn into a pretty good live stream. I'm hoping. The last night's live stream, it took about 25 minutes, half hour, till I had about 10 people in on the chat, and then it was worth doing. Got some excellent questions, some excellent hockey talk. That's what it's all about after all, guys. Excuse me as I get a drink. But yes, Eddie Van Haskell has Buffalo Sabres as a logo, as a sting, so I'm assuming you're a Buffalo fan. I'm not a hater of Buffalo. I was a big Matthew Barnaby fan when I was a kid, actually. Bob is a legend. Bob Cole is a legend for sure. I always liked Harvey Neal. He was great too. Yeah, Harvey Neal was great too. But like I say, I'm from Newfoundland, so Bob Cole, I guess, has a different meaning to me. And also, an interesting note, Bob Cole grew up on the same street I did, on Signal Hill Road in St. John's, Newfoundland, just down the road from where I grew up. His entire family grew up just like literally 6 houses down. Hey, David, and hey, Levi. Did you guys hear that Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki have been given limited minor roles so far at training camp? Neither one of them are in the top 6 at training camp. This isn't the regular season, this is just training camp. On Team A and Team B, they're both on separate teams, and both are on the third line. And so far, I know it's only the first day, have been given a limited role. That's interesting. Also, Alzner got injured. He's listed as day-to-day, but we know that could stretch into a month or two in Montreal. Groin injury, and Noah Jolson missed today too because he had a headache. They're saying he's day-to-day. They're calling it a headache. I'm hoping it's not to do with his eye injury that he's had. I hope he doesn't get recurring headaches or have a concussion that's bothering him or something. How much cap space does Montreal have left over? They have almost $5 million, I believe, just below $5 million, or in the $4.5 to $5 million range. I'm almost positive that's how much they have left. I could actually check it on Cap Friendly right now and tell you exactly how much they have. But, yeah, Carl Alzner's injured, and Noah Jolson is listed as day-to-day with headaches. But I'm just hoping it isn't from his injury, from his facial injury, because that could cause long-term problems like that where you get headaches. But so far today at training camp, the most surprising thing to me, Ryan Poehling, Nick Suzuki, limited roles, third line minutes in training camp. It's the media is already saying it doesn't look like they're going to make it doesn't look like they're going to be given a big role in Montreal, which is surprising to me. They're already saying that. But let's see the Montreal Canadiens cap space now. I'll tell you in 2 seconds exactly how much cap the Montreal Canadiens have to work with right now at this moment. The Montreal Canadiens' current cap situation is their projected cap hit for this year is $77,455,000, and their projected cap space is $4,044,524. Do you think Honka will be a good addition? If he gets picked up, he could be. The guy was a former 6th overall pick. There's tons of potential there. He hasn't transitioned to the NHL. I believe his career high is around 25 points. But like you say, he's young. Like a different fit in Montreal. You can never write off a young player like that. If you can get him for the right price, I wouldn't mind seeing him in a Habs uniform. They could use all the defensive depth they can get. Daryl Leask, $4 million, and can see Suzuki and Poehling both going to have impact roles this season. Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Daryl. That's what I'm saying. I'm reading media things here now. I can read it back if you want me to, but I'm reading things here in the media now where they're already saying that it doesn't look like Nick Suzuki and Ryan Poehling are going to be given, they quoted it to, impact roles, which is crazy to say after one day in training camp because they were on the third line. They're younger players. They could work their way up. But there are some inferior players, in my opinion, on the lines above them. Yeah, but where was it to? I'll go back to that story. So far, Victor Mete. Oh, something here about Victor Mete. Victor Mete bonds with Shea Weber on and off the ice. That's great to hear. That was actually just released 6 minutes ago by the Montreal Gazette. Jolson and Alzner, there it is. That's what I'm looking for. Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki not given big roles to start at camp. It says right here. That they haven't been given impact roles and doesn't look like they're doing much. Pretty much the quotes he's saying are ridiculous in my opinion. To say that after one training camp game, I don't know if I agree with it. In my opinion, I 100% agree with Daryl. At least Ryan Poehling should be a lock to make the team this year, especially after how he performed in his one NHL debut game. A hat-trick in his debut. He looked like a man among men at development camp. I'm sure he's going to look great in the preseason. So the kid's a lock to make the team, in my opinion. Probably a depth center. And Nick Suzuki, the talent is there. Honest to God, if Nick Suzuki made the team and he was up for the Calder at the end of the year, I wouldn't be shocked. There's a reason why I have him ranked as the number one Habs prospect. I know it comes with some controversy. Cole Caulfield, in a lot of people's opinion, even Poehling, in a lot of people's opinion, is the number one prospect. But for me, it is hands down Nick Suzuki. Chewy Limited says, I do not think that is a bad thing. Suiting up on a third in case you have to look great to get promoted into the top 6. Yeah, you're talking about the prospects. I thought you were talking about Hanka for a second. I was looking at your last question. Yeah, the prospects suiting up on the third and working their way up into the role. That's how I said if they do make the team, people are expecting them to come in and maybe Nick Suzuki already get put on the second line. Both of them, in my opinion, are going to either be on the third or fourth line. They should be on the third line. You should not give young players like that fourth line minutes. And if they're good enough, work their way up. Or maybe even play themselves out of a role if they do struggle. But I really, really like these kids, and I think both of them should have some good moments this year in Montreal, in my opinion. Kind of got your question confused when I was reading it. I thought you were talking about Hanka. David Arthur says, do you like the Ottawa Maple Leafs? The Ottawa Maple Leafs are in St. John's, Newfoundland, where I live to right now for their training camp. So I should drop down and boo the hell out of them, but I wouldn't get in the arena because they sold out in 20 minutes. But I'll stand outside and scream at the top of my lungs, Leafs suck. Hopefully they hear me. Austin Matthews is saying he wants to get screeched in, which is a Newfoundland tradition. Don't screech that guy in. He is no honorable Newfie, in my opinion. I guess there's a lot of there's a reason why there's a lot of Maple Leafs fans here in Newfoundland. We had their farm team for years, the St. John's Maple Leafs. Thankfully, it didn't work out, and I didn't have to grow up with St. John's Maple Leafs in my town for a long time. Darryl Leaf says, agreed. I like Suzuki as a versatile forward. He can play the wing as well. I see him more as a winger, but projecting as a winger coming into NHL. Defensively, he's really, don't get me wrong, he's solid defensively, but his offensive upside blows the hell out of his defensive upside. Look at what he did in the OHL playoffs. His team was down 3-0 to London. The guy had like 6 goals and 10 points in 4 games to bring him back to win the series. He did the same thing against Saginaw. He did the same thing in the finals. The kid's an absolute beast, and when he's under pressure, he really, really performs. Thankfully, I have a drink on hand tonight, guys. Last night I kept having to run to get a drink. I wasn't prepared at all. And I got a little bit of hockey stuff in the background. The wife will not let me turn my office into like a streaming room. So I got to figure something out. I'm going to turn that couch into a Habs couch. By the time it's all said and done, that thing will be painted with Habs logos on it. Chewy Limited says, do you think that Bergeron will either try, or you mean Bergevin? Do you think, he said Bergeron, but I'm assuming he means Bergevin. Do you think that Bergevin will either try to go after Connor or try to make up a trade during camp? There's a possibility he could try and trade for Connor, possibly offer sheet him. It all depends how it goes with Winnipeg. There's a lot of rumors out there that things have soured a little bit between Kyle Connor and Winnipeg. So maybe there's a chance of getting him. But I do think he's going to pull a trade off. Like I said yesterday, there's just way too many centers in the system. Like, there's so many centers right now. Last year's center depth was a huge issue. When I listed out the training camp roster, out of the forwards, I believe 11 or 12 of them were centers. And some of these guys are overaged players. They're not going back to the CHL. They're not going back to junior leagues. Maybe they'll go to Finland and play or something like that. But there are contracts that could be moved, that smaller contracts, possibly packaged with picks, for a good defenseman that could come in and help the power play, or a good top 6 forward. Who knows? But I do expect to see somebody like maybe Charles Hudon or a young prospect like Jake Evans eventually get traded. Because they do need to make a little bit of room in Laval too, because where are all these centers going to play? It's absolutely insane. And some of them ain't cut out to play on the wing. They're like pure centers. Some of them are defensive centers too. They don't have the offense. David says, I'm going to make my pizza for dinner now. Scotty, enjoy your pizza, David, buddy. One of my favorite foods for sure. Extra cheese, extra pepperoni. According to Engels, it's likely that Brooke and Fleury are likely to make the team, it has to be one or the other. Because you think about it, unless one of them is going to be an extra and it'll be a healthy scratch most nights. But you think about it, the top 2 roles are locked up guys. We have Jeff Petrie and Shea Weber. Unless Jeff Petrie gets traded, it has to be Brook, Fleury, Jolson, or Folin on the third pairing right side. And it's not looking good for Jolson right now because his very first day of training camp, before he even got a chance to hit the ice, he's already listed day to day with headaches. And he had that really bad eye injury. I think that could be contributing to it. So, yeah, it's not looking good for Jolson. And his contract's up at the end of the year. So if he can play, which I pray to God he can, everything I've read said he's 100% healthy, so it's kind of shocking to me he wasn't at training camp today. He's already listed day to day before hitting the ice. But the kid's contract's up at the end of the year. I'd like to see him get some playing time in Montreal, see what you really got with a player like Noah Jolson. And if I had to pick between Brook and Fleury, I would pick Fleury. I think Fleury's more NHL ready. He's got quite a bit of development in the AHL. Excuse me, guys, I'm a little bit stuffed up here. Chewy Limited says, do you think the rumored deal with Calgary for Brody and Folik will happen for Paul Byron and a prospect? Well, if we're getting Brody and Folik for Paul Byron and a prospect, I would absolutely love that, depending on who the prospect is. If the prospect's like, say, even a Brook or somebody like a Noah Jolson, or maybe a crazy good prospect like Suzuki or Paling, which I couldn't see for players of that caliber, Brody and Folik, I probably wouldn't be too happy with it. You probably are going to have to give back a defensive prospect. The main person who I would like in that trade is TJ Brody, one of the most consistent defensemen in the NHL. I know he got a lot of shit this year in the playoffs. He wasn't the best for Calgary in the playoffs this year, but you look at his totals every year, like defensively, offensively, advanced analytics. The guy is so consistent, it's crazy. All of his numbers are almost always on par each year. It's like you know what you're going to get from Brody. He doesn't explode, have these great seasons. He's came into the NHL and he's pretty much been a consistently good defenseman since he's come into the NHL. Josh Hunter, what's up, Josh, buddy? My buddy Josh. Josh says, what's up, buddy? Stoked for Monday. Absolutely stoked for Monday. And the team you're playing is the New Jersey Devils. So not only do we get to see our Montreal Canadiens, we might get to see the number 1 overall pick this year, Jack Hughes, hit the ice too. Hoping he doesn't do too well against my Habs, but he's a really dynamic young player. There's a reason why he holds all those records in the United States National Junior Development Program, because the kid's a dynamo, and he comes from a hockey family too. So I'm really excited to not only see my Habs prospects that are going to be playing in the preseason as well. I'm excited to see Jack Hughes. I'm not going to lie, guys. Definitely not excited to see Subban, though. I hope he isn't even playing. I was not a fan of Subban when he was in Montreal, at least not in his last 2 years. Don't hate the guard, nothing to hold no ill will against him, but he's just, like Max Pacioretty, he's just one of those guys I was not a big fan of. I was super let down when Patches was named captain, I'm not going to lie, guys. Because a captain should be a guy that brings 100% night in and night out, and Patches just didn't do that. When he was down and out, he wore his emotions on his sleeve. It affected the team. And when he was on a high, when he was scoring like 12, 13 goals in 10 games, putting up 15 and 20, having these streaks and then going cold. But when he was on a high, the team did rally around him. So in that way, he was good. When he was on a high, the team almost seemed to be on a high. But when he was down and out, which was a lot of the 2017-2018 season before he got traded, the team struggled. And there's a reason why the team struggled when Patches was the captain in the last year. His attitude, like Mark Bergevin said, the attitude in the locker room had to change. But I have a feeling his attitude was the main attitude Bergevin was talking about. An NHL Hockey News Report says, hi, buddy. How's it going, buddy? Thank you for tuning into my live stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you haven't heard NHL Hockey News Reports, Noah Jolson listed day to day, didn't play today in training camp with a headache. I'm hoping it's not coming from that eye injury he had. And also, Carl Alsner is injured again, guys. He has a groin injury. He's listed day to day, but with an older player like that, that could turn into months. Good. How are you? Oh, I'm great. I'm great. Sitting home doing a live stream. My wife has gone to work. My child is finally in bed. Didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Don't have a pile of free time on my hands tonight because I had to work 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. But why not talk about hockey, guys? It's my passion. And if you are a new viewer, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be reviewing every game, and I'm going to be every chance I get when my wife is not home or my kid has gone to bed or I get a bit of free time and I'm home and I have this camera in front of me and there's a game on, you best believe I'll be live streaming that game, and no matter what, doesn't matter what the wife says, I'll be putting my foot down and I'll be doing reviews of every single Montreal Canadiens game. I didn't do every one last year. I didn't even start up until halfway through the season. That's when I first started my channel. But I will be covering every game this year, and I'm super pumped to do it, guys. NHL Hockey News Report says, Suzuki Canadiens this season. Obviously you weren't tuned in when I first began, but Suzuki was given a limited role today at training camp, and that's only in training camp. He was put on the third line, but I suppose it's to see how he does. But the players he was put with, I don't think will bring the best out of him. Maybe Jordan Weal might. Besides, in Montreal, Jordan Weal hasn't been the most effective NHL player. He was good in his short stint in Montreal last year. Don't get me wrong, he looked excellent. But I don't know. I think he's going to work his way up the line in training camp, do excellent in the preseason, and I think he may crack the roster. NHL Hockey News Report says, my passion too. I'm going to preview and review all of the Canadian games. Awesome. I will check out all of your previews and reviews for sure. And if you haven't, go check out NHL Hockey News Report's channel and subscribe to the channel, guys. Josh Hunt says, yes, man, we need more Habs. There's so much Leaf shit out there already. Haha. There's so much Leaf shit in St. John's right now, Josh. The Leafs are here for their training camp, man. The Leafs are in St. John's right now. Austin Matthews is talking about getting screeched in. They're here for their training camp. So I've been hearing nothing but Leafs. People at work are Leafs fans, and it just drives me crazy. There's a lot of Leafs fans in St. John's, Newfoundland. We did used to have their farm team. It was over 2 decades ago, I believe, but we did have their farm team at one point. But it's crazy how much Leafs talk I've heard this week, especially with Marner signing yesterday. It's everybody did a Marner video except me. I've seen so many people do played out Marner videos saying the exact same stuff, listing what his contract was, giving their opinions on it, and almost everybody's opinion was the same except for biased Leafs fans. He got overpaid. There's no doubt about it. He got overpaid, but I was not wasting my time doing a Mitch Marner video. I'm a diehard Habs fan. The last thing I want to talk about is Toronto's team getting better and Mitch Marner signing. It may affect the Habs, but I honestly don't care about that player. I've heard enough about Mitch Marner. My sentiment when it comes to Mitch Marner is fuck Mitch Marner. And Joe, what's up, buddy? Joe says hi there. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in, Joe. Really appreciate it. NHL Hockey News Report says, thanks, man. No problem. Anytime. Josh says, worst con, man. Jesus, I bet all the Boz are Leafs fans now. If you're not from Newfoundland, that's Leafs lingo, guys. We don't say guys around here. We say Boz. But no, not all the Boz are Leafs fans. Still a lot of Habs fans down here. And you know, most of my buddies are Habs fans because Leafs fans drives me nuts. And I goes out, has a few beer, and I got to hear about how great Toronto is all night. Even though it's not true, and I will debate the hell out of you on it. It's just not my cup of tea, you know. Leafs fans... My stepdad says the same thing. I have respect for all NHL fans out there, even Boston fans, but Leafs fans rub me the wrong way. I suppose Leafs fans will say the exact same thing about Habs fans, of course. But Boston fans don't bother me as much. Excuse me, guys, I really need a drink. Josh says, I remember the old St. John's Maple Leafs, as do I, my friend. I remember them very well because I only grew up the road from the Memorial Stadium where they used to play, which is now a Dominion. Just a little fun fact. The stadium that the Leafs used to play at, the Memorial Stadium where the St. John's Maple Leafs played, the AHL affiliate for the Toronto Maple Leafs, is now a grocery store. So if you want to go to the grocery store and buy some groceries, no problem. But if you want to go see a St. John's Maple Leafs game, you're shit out of luck. Gregory Brain, how's it going, bud? Welcome to the live stream. He says, in this area, I see a lot of Toronto games, so I depend on you guys to keep me up on the news of Montreal. Anytime, man. I will be I probably won't preview every game. I'll be live streaming as many as I can, but I'll be reviewing every single Montreal game. What part of the country are you in? I'm assuming you're in Canada. You see in this area, I see a lot of Toronto games, so you must be in Ontario, I'm assuming. But thank you for joining the live stream. And yes, tune into my channel. I will keep you updated. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, Guys, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 500 before the beginning of the season. If I don't, it's not the end of the world, but I would like to see that number grow a little bit. It wouldn't hurt, that's for sure. And if I can get to 1,000 subs, I can live stream on my phone, which is so much better quality of a camera. Niagara Peninsula, yeah, I would say you do see a lot of Leafs games and you hear a lot about the Toronto Maple Leafs. But, like you say, I will keep you updated on Montreal Canadiens anytime, and check out my friend Talking Habs with Rick channel and NHL Hockey News Report. We're all diehard Habs channels, and I got no problem shouting out other Habs channels as well, because after I do my review, the first thing I do is I go to my friend's Habs channel and I look at his review. I'll go to like Tim and Sid, I'll go to Sportsnet. I just can't get enough of Habs hockey, and I like hearing different opinions on it and like getting little tidbits, little facts that I can share with people. NHL Hockey News Report says, did you see my video on my jersey for Canadiens 100 Classic jersey before? No, I didn't see that, my friend, but I will go check it out after my live stream. Now that I know more about your channel, and I know you do mostly Habs stuff, you do some Habs stuff, I will for sure be checking out your channel. I'm pretty sure when you subscribe to me, I checked out a couple of your videos, but if they're Habs related, I'm going to be more into it. But yes, 100% I'll have to check that out. Like I just said, I'm a huge fan of hockey channels, like Hands Down Hockey, Hot Take Hockey, the Montreal Canadiens Hockey Inside Out. My wife says I drive her nuts talking about hockey. I'm like obsessed, and I play hockey too. But it's just something about the sport. Same thing with UFC and MMA. It's just those two sports. Don't have a lot of free time on my hands, so it's kind of my passion. It's kind of my hobby. And not to mention, I grew up wanting to be. It didn't work out, obviously, because I'm sitting here talking to you guys. But I grew up wanting to be an NHL player. I was one of those kids that was like in the driveway with the hockey stick every day, fantasizing that I was Guy Lafleur, or who was the best Habs at the time. I believe, I can't even remember who. Michael Rodder at one point. I wanted to be just like Michael Rodder, and certain players. That's how long ago it was. I can't even remember half the players. I know it's terrible 90s Habs teams. If I missed any of your question, guys, I'm sorry. When Gregory came to the live stream, I kind of skipped on his question because he was a new live streamer and I wanted to read his question. Chewy Limited says, "What do you think of the Marner overplay done by What do you think of the Marner overplay done by the media this year? Will it affect the market in the future?" Oh, 100%. Look how much Jack Eichel's contract affected the media. Jack Eichel got $10 million coming off his entry level. Mitch Marner is getting $10.8 coming off his entry level. And the way people are talking about it, how other RFAs were watching Marner to see how much he got so they can demand so much. I would expect Braden Point to be demanding $11 million. Mikko Rantanen to be demanding what Marner got, because in my opinion, both of those players are better than Marner. Kachuk isn't that much worse than Marner. He's probably on the same level as Marner, especially with his grittiness and the extra stuff he brings. So there's going to be RFAs demanding a lot of money. Kyle Dubas is out of his mind handing out all these big contracts. He has he does have $40 million tied up in 4 players. 11's going to Tavares. Basically 11's going to Marner. Almost 12 is going to Matthews, and almost 7 is going to Nylander. So it's like 40 million and like a little bit of change between those 4 players. And then you got to fill out the rest of your roster with 42 million. Like, especially with their defense coming apart next year, a lot of defensive free agents. If they do not win the cup this year, which fingers crossed they do not. Sorry guys, I just hit my mic just in if you heard a bit of interaction on your side. But if they win the cup this year, it worked out for them. But hopefully they do not, because they're all in this year. Because after this year, I cannot see the Leafs being competitive. They had to fill out a completely, entirely new defense. The only guy I believe under guaranteed top 4 this year that they have signed, locked up for a while, is Morgan Rielly, which in my opinion is their best defenseman. But Tyson Barrie is going to be gone. Cece's probably going to be gone. I'm not sure when Dermott's contract's up, but a lot of their blue liners are free agents this year. Joe says, made a video earlier about that question I asked yesterday about Hayden Fleury and if he would make a good acquisition for us. That would make a good topic for a video. I will have to check out that video for sure. And I heard you asking Talking Habs at Rick about it last night on his live stream. He knows a lot more about Hayden Fleury than I do. I'm not going to lie. Like, I didn't know a ton about Hayden Fleury, but after checking him out, like Rick said, he was kind of a letdown, but it'd probably be an interesting avenue to explore. Who else do we have? Josh says, I hate the Leafs, of course, but Steve Dangle is pretty funny at times. Yeah, I'm actually subscribed to Steve Dangle. Sometimes he annoys me when he gets a bit over the top and he screams too much, and he sounds like a girl sometimes when he screams. But how can I hate on somebody like Steve Dangle? He's like me. He talks super fast, he's super hype, and he's super passionate about his team. But I don't stand here screaming like a girl, and obviously I do not have the enthusiasm Steve Dangle has. Otherwise, I'd be in Sportsnet like him. I have my own successful podcast and be doing pretty well just stop talking about hockey. But Dangle's been doing it for, Jesus, over 10 years. That guy's been talking about hockey since he was like a young teenager on YouTube. So the guy knows his stuff. I cannot hate on him. And I'm, even though he's a Leafs fan, I'm not going to lie, I'm subscribed to his channel. Don't mind him at all. Chewy Limited says, have you ever thought of doing some history videos of players that had played for the Habs even before you were born? I have, but really, like, players that I'm talking about before I was born, yes, I could go back and look at their history. Yes, I could go back and look at their tape. But I'd rather look at I do talk sometimes about the older players. Like I talked about Guy Carbonneau last night. I do know a fair bit about the older players, about Habs history. But I'd like to give my insight like on players I've seen, I grew up watching, or I have a lot of knowledge about. Like I can talk about their game. Like this guy was amazing on the ice. You should have seen the way he skated. You should have seen the way he was in this game and that game. And it's really hard to describe a player like that you didn't grow up watching. Like I'm getting all my information from my dad and YouTube videos and older subscribers and people like you that don't mind giving me information about older players. Like, I love talking about Guy Carbonneau last night, but pretty much everything that came out of my mouth last night about Guy Carbonneau was handed down to me from my father. My dad is a hardcore Habs fan, and he schooled me on my Habs history growing up for sure. He did not like that there were certain players on the Habs I didn't like growing up. When they were terrible 90s teams, like, I would get up so upset when they were mad. I'd trash them and stuff like that. My dad would be like, how could you talk about this team? I grew up watching them win 10, 12, 15 Stanley Cups. Just because you only got to see them win one, just because they haven't been winning in your lifetime, don't mean they're not a great team. Like, he would go overboard with it, man. That was like the only time my dad would get mad at me is about hockey. It's actually crazy. Joe says, I realized recently that your username is a reference to Scotty2Hockey from WWE. Yeah, it is. That's actually a pretty clever name with the hockey in there. See what you did there? Oh, that's what I hate to admit it, but I'm not the modern day wrestling, but I grew up in the Attitude Era, and I was a big wrestling fan, and so many girls and friends in high school called me Scotty2Hockey. That was like my nickname. I'm not trying to say I'm hot or anything like that, but that was what everybody called me because he was a wrestler at the time. He was super popular, and my name was Scotty. And I had blonde hair just like the guy, and I used to spike my hair. And everybody used to call me Scotty2Hockey, so when I was doing this, I was like, what's a clever name? Scotty2Hockey. I love it a lot. So it took some people a while to catch on to that one, but I'm glad that you noticed it. Only 2 or 3 subscribers have mentioned that to me yet. Josh says, Scotty, if you want to get subscribers, considering posting a replay of your live streams and leave the live chat, replay turned on, and that will bring in people for sure. Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Josh. I will do that. I do post a replay of my live stream, though, because my last night live stream is in my videos, if you go look at my videos, because when I end my live stream, it automatically uploads to my YouTube. But I don't believe I leave the live chat open. I believe if you watch the video, though, you can look at the live chat and see what people were saying. And I also have a little chat screen down at the bottom of the screen here. I don't know if it's showing up on your end, guys, but you should be able to see a little bit of the chat on my screen. It should be right around here, but I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm using Streamlabs and I'm only just getting the hang of it. But before it's all said and done, I'm going to have a podcast here and I'm going to have a little corner up here, a little channel up here for one of my friends. I'm going to be on this side and we're going to have some Habs pictures down here and hopefully some highlight videos and stuff like that. I'm just getting the hang of it. My buddy Matt knows a lot about this stuff. I'm hoping he can help me a bit with it because I'm for sure going to be collabing with that guy. Matt from the Sin Bin, if you haven't seen his channel, he did a live stream last night and a podcast with his friend Jake Link. Excellent channel. Check it out and sub, guys. And I was on his podcast last week. Chewy Limited says, I was meaning the cutbacks that the Sportsnet do to the lack of people wanting to hear the television shows over Marner's situation. TSN is getting more listeners than Sportsnet. Yeah, Sportsnet recently let go of Bob McCowan. I thought he quit, but I believe he was actually forced out, that he left. They also got rid of my favorite guy on Sportsnet was Doug McClain. They also got rid of him. And the one guy who I couldn't stand on Sportsnet, even though he was there the longest, Nick Kyprios, which was really shocking to me, they got rid of him. Just please don't get rid of Tim and Sid. I love Tim and Sid. It's like my favorite. It actually is my favorite sports show. Excuse me, guys. Gregory Brain says, next year Toronto has to re-sign all their D, and Riley is the only one they don't have to re-sign. Yeah, I touched on that earlier, Gregory. That's 100% true. Toronto is one or done this year. They're all in this year because they have 4 players tied up long term that's eaten up. Unless the cap really, really jumps up in the next few years, I cannot see how they can be competitive in the long run. 4 players eating up half their cap. How are they going to fill out the rest of the roster with $42 million? And they're going to have to completely restructure their blue line next year. I don't hope, but for Toronto Maple Leafs fans' sake, they better hope that they got some good defensive prospects in their system, or they draft some really good ones this year, because, man, how are they going to restructure that blue line? Like, all their blue liners are free agents at the end of the year. Something Kyle Dubas should have thought about before he signed 4 of these players to massive contracts. Like, he really should have thought about that. It may help him this year. It may get him out of the way. Who knows? They do have a good team. But there's other good teams out there, too, and it's really risky. Kyle Dubas could be the most hated man in Toronto in 2 years. NHL Hockey News Report says, I will see you later. Got to go. Definitely watch all your videos. Bye. Thank you very much, man, and I will check out your channel for sure. And if you haven't checked it out, guys, check out NHL Hockey News Reports. He does Montreal Canadiens videos, too. Joe says, did you hear that both Jolson and Alzner had minor injuries? Yes, actually, at the very beginning of the live stream, I had my phone out and I was going through Habs news, and that's the first thing I mentioned, that Alzner's injury, I don't know if it's minor. You can't really trust Montreal when they say a player is listed day to day. We've seen them do it with players before. List players day to day, and then all of a sudden they're out for a month, and they're not giving up nothing on the player, telling us nothing. As for Jolson, he left with a headache when he came into the arena. I'm just really hoping the headache isn't from his eye injury that he had last season and he's getting recurring headaches. Like, the guy hasn't hit the ice yet. He shows up to play, and all of a sudden, I got a massive headache. I can't play hockey. That's kind of weird for a young player like that. It isn't a common thing with Noah Jolson. As far as I know, he has never missed a game due to a headache before. And it's kind of a coincidence that he had that eye injury last year with nerve damage, which could cause headaches. Because anybody who's had a serious eye injury or has problem with their eyes, has sensitive sight, headaches is one of the big symptoms with that. It's like concussions. Chewy Limited says, there are videos on a lot of the Habs greats so that you could look at some highlights after all. The leading goal scorer is not called the Timo Solani Award. It is called the Rocket Richard for a reason. Yeah, I agree with you. I love Rocket Richard. I've watched the movie The Rocket. I've watched tons of clips of The Rocket. If I am going to do Habs history, which actually I'm probably going to focus on that a little bit. I'll probably focus in on it and do a couple of big name players. I'd like to do Cornier. What's his name? Yvan Cornier, I believe his name was. I know a lot about that guy. My dad was big on him, and I've really watched a lot of him play, and I done my research on that guy. I'd like to do a video on him, and of course the Rocket and Guy Lafleur. And I'm really big on goalies, and I do know a ton about Ken Dryden because I've debated Price, Watt, and Dryden a ton, and I've watched a ton of Dryden clips, and I've watched most of their finals wins on YouTube from like the 70s, the ones that were televised at least up to the 70s or whatever. But Dryden, I'd like to do one on him too. But if I was going to have to pick an older player to 100% do a video on, which I'm sure I will do eventually, it would be Cornier. I really like that Yvan Cornier guy. I think he's underrated. I'd like to do a video on him because I don't think a lot of Habs fans know enough about him. When you look at my, I actually did Habs greats, all the jerseys that were retired. I did a slideshow of it with some music. The very first guy I put up was Cornier. Cornier. I suck at pronouncing name, guys. Forgive me. UMG Sicko says, hey Scott, what's up UMG Sicko? Appreciate you joining the live stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Gregory Brain says, I would not be surprised to see Toronto trade Nylander, especially if he has another bad season. That's what I'm thinking too. Out of the big, it's mainly the big three. It's mainly Tavares, Marner, and Matthews. But if they were going to trade a big player to clear some cap to restructure the defense next year, Nylander could be the guy they're going to trade. Maybe this year, even if he played very well due to their cap situation, they could trade him while his value is really high. They could get some good assets for Nylander. If he plays up to his standards, like especially like he did at the World Championships this year after the season, Nylander could bring you a pretty good package and some pretty good young defenders back the other way, or some pretty good picks to get some young defenders to restructure that blue line. And that's not to mention Frederik Andersen is a free agent in 2021, I believe. So they only got 2 more years with Andersen too, and he is their rock. He's like their Carey Price. What Carey Price is to Montreal, Frederik Andersen is to Toronto, because out of all the goalies in the league, I believe he faced the most shots last year, and he definitely faced the most high-quality scoring chances. And he had excellent save percentage, excellent numbers. Really good goalie. John Beliveau also. Oh, yes, John Beliveau, of course. John Beliveau is the guy who Jesperi Kotkaniemi was compared to this year. Kind of a crazy comparison to give an 18-year-old kid. Maybe he was talking about the way he carried himself, but somehow Kotkaniemi got John Beliveau comparisons this year. Who do you think will be the captain after Shea? If Gallagher's still around, which I'm assuming he will be, Brendan Gallagher, he should have been the captain to begin with. Love Shea Weber, but Brendan Gallagher embodies everything it is to be a leader, a hard worker, a guy the team will rally around in Montreal. Brendan Gallagher would have been my pick for the captain, but I'm very happy with Shea Weber being the captain too, and I can understand why they did it. One of the most respected defensemen in the league, guys. Give me 1 second, guys. I have to grab a drink. Nothing like some good old raspberry juice. Chewy Limited says, a lot of great Habs were born before 1980. Oh, you got that right. Most of the great Habs were born before 1980, my friend. Don't get me wrong, a lot were born after that, yeah, most of the great Habs were born before 1980. Savard, Lapointe, Robinson, etc. So much history to the Canadians. I think it would draw some of the older crowd and teach some of the current subscribers. That's what I would like to do. That's why I said when I do my history videos, which I'm sure I will do a few of, like Talking Habs, that Rick has done a few too, and he grew up through some of these eras, excuse me, guys. But that's what I'd like to do. Like, that's what I'm here to do. A lot of subscribers don't know certain things about the Habs. I've said many things on this channel where subscribers commented and was like, whoa, I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me that. Thanks for filling me in on that. And that's what it's all about. Josh Hunt, my buddy Josh says, Josh Hunt is from Newfoundland, guys. I grew up with him and went to school, so he's a friend of mine. He says, I 100% agree with Gally being the captain after Shea. If not him, Domi or Deneau. If Gally's not around after Shea Weber, which I'm assuming Brendan Gallagher will be around. His contract's also up in 2021, and so is Deneau's contract's up in 2021. But if Brendan Gallagher, by some miracle, is not around, I would say Max Domi will be the captain. And as much as I love Philip Deneau, I think after 2021, he might not get re-signed unless he takes a legit discount or he's not playing up to standards and they bring him in as a depth defenseman, because we have so much center depth, and the future in Montreal is Paling, Kotkaniemi, Domi, Nick Suzuki. We had players like Jordan Wheel. Like, there's so much center depth in Montreal. I don't know if Deneau is going to be around after 2021. Like, he might re-sign and end up a depth center for the Montreal Canadiens. He should be playing on the second or third line anyways, but he's really good with Tatar and Gallagher. But the way the team's structured right now with all the center depth they have, he could find himself the odd man out when all these big contracts are getting signed in 2021, because there's going to be a lot of raises handed out in 2021. Brendan Gallagher's contract's up. He's going to want a raise for sure. He's one of the best bargain contracts in the league right now. Chewy says, never said they were born, said they played before 1980. Oh, okay, yeah. They played before 1980. I know what you were saying, Chewy. Yeah, most of the great Habs were playing before 1980. Playing before the 80s. Like you say, the 70s was the greatest era for the Habs. The 70s was the greatest era for the Habs. The Habs already had their dynasty built before that, but when you look at the glory days of Montreal, it was without a doubt the 70s. It had to be those Guy Lafleur days. like you say, it's before my time, but just from what I know of Habs history. That is why I brought it up in regards to old players that played in the dynasty teams. Exactly. Joe says, honestly, I'm worried for Jolson. I'm hoping he's alright. His career was in question as the puck hit a nerve in his eye. That's scary. Seeing what happened today, I hope he is okay for the future. Me too. I really hope he's okay for the future because I hate to say it, but I do think that the headache he got today, maybe these are recurring headaches the Habs have been talking about, hoping that he'll get over it, or maybe he's been seeing a doctor and he's been told he's okay, but they're coming back. But I do believe that's from that I do believe that's from the eye injury because I've never heard of Noah Jolson missing any game before due to a headache. That's rare. I know it's a training camp game, but the guy hasn't played in a while. He wants to lace his skates up. The Habs want to see what they got in this kid. You can't forget Noah Jolson's contract's up at the end of this year. He's only played just over 40 career games in Montreal, split between 2 seasons. I've liked what I've seen from the kid, but we haven't really seen what Noah Jolson is yet. Chewy Limited says, now this one, do you ever see the Montreal Canadiens ever losing a cup final again after 1989 on home ice, or will that the Flames be the only team back when they... Now this one, do you ever see the Montreal Canadiens ever losing a cup final again after 19... Oh, do I ever see the Montreal Canadiens lose a cup final on home ice again after 1989 final? I sure do hope not, and if they do go to the Stanley Cup Finals, I'm praying they win, and if by some miracle they lose the series, I do not want it to be in Montreal. I'm sure it won't be like Vancouver. I'm sure there won't be riots like there were in Vancouver. Habs fans are not that spoiled. We've seen our team win cups, but yeah, I hope that they don't ever lose a cup again in Montreal. I'm pretty sure all the Habs fans my age have seen that game, have gone back and watched that. When Lanny Murphy's holding the cup at the end of the game, I don't think anybody expected Calgary to beat Montreal that year either. Like you say, Chewy, you're an older subscriber. You definitely know your stuff when it comes to the older Habs dynasty. And I love being schooled on Habs history. The more the better. Gregory Brain says, if Galley scores 35 or more goals this year, he may go for $8.5 million. I do not think he's going to get that much. I don't think he's going to get $8.5 million because even if he does get over 35 goals, you have to look at his point production too. His career high was this year. It's only 53 points. He hasn't put out a lot of points in his career. And Galley's not the type of player that's going to demand I don't think personally he's the type of player, just judging by his contract right now, that's going to demand a pile of money. Like, if you needed a player to take a slight discount to make your team better, to, like, help you in your cap crunch, players like Galley and Domi, at least to me, appear to be the type of players that would take the they're not going to take a huge hometown discount. Times have changed, but would take a small discount to help the team. Because that's one thing about the Leafs. None of their players helped them at all. Tavares took the max he could. Matthews took the max he could. Marner absolutely took them to the farm. Took everything they got. Took everything. Like, I can't even explain how Marner got $10.8 million. He had 194-point season. And John Tavares, in my opinion, inflated his stats. How he got this much money with 6 years term is just beyond. And when Nylander got signed for $7 million, I did not think it was that bad of a contract. Yes, he had a bad year, but I think Nylander and Matthews are going to be their best contracts out of all 4 of those contracts. I think Tavares is eventually going to have a little bit of a drop-off. He's getting older, guys. He's getting up there, too. Chewy Limited says the 50s were also a great dynasty era for the Habs as well. Yeah, the 50s were a great dynasty era. But everybody always says there was less teams. That's the one knock on the Habs. I've actually had somebody say to me one time, oh, Montreal's cups came when they only had 6 teams. Dude, learn your history. They won cups in the 70s. They won cups after the expansion era. They won cups in the expansion era. But a lot of their teams, a lot of their older cups, before the 50s, there was the original 6. There wasn't as many teams in the league. A lot of people give Montreal that knock, but they were the best of the best at that time. Chewy Limited says, do you know what Habs left winger was a guitar player before he decided to play hockey? What Habs left winger was a guitar player before he decided to play hockey? I'm just thinking of rocker looking Habs right now. Can't really think about that off the top of my head. Maybe Maybe Alex Kovalev? I honestly don't know. Joe says, I'm sure Jolson will be given an extension with us, maybe 3 or 4 year deal for about 2 or 3 million. I'm not positive about that, Joe. Like, he's already gone through his entry year deal after this year. If he doesn't play a lot this year, that means he's only going to have like 50 games under his belt in 3 years for the Montreal Canadiens. I know it's not the kid's fault he got hit in the face with a puck, and in 2017, 2018, he didn't get played as much as he should have. But he only has 42 games split between 2 seasons for the Montreal Canadiens. So there's no guarantee this guy gets extended, and there's no guarantee he's going to be as good as people are going to make him out to be playing on the third pairing this year. He's coming off this eye injury. He hasn't played in 7 months. He just missed the first day of training camp due to a headache. He could have recurring headaches, and he could really come in and struggle and not get re-signed. I think it would be a mistake letting him go if he does end up healthy. But this, him having a headache and already missing the first game of training camp, that kind of worries me. Hey, Rick, what's up? LetsTalkHabs just came in on the stream. How's it going, buddy? I really appreciate you joining the stream. I'm using Streamlabs, the same thing Matt uses. I checked out your stream earlier afterwards. When I'm done this, that's the first thing I'm watching after my friend the Hockey News Reports video that he told me about. But thank you for joining the stream, Rick. Appreciate it. LetsTalkHabs, Rick's in here, a legend, knows his stuff. Joe says, Galley's a real team guy. I think he's going to ask for about $6 to $7 million. I don't think he'll ask for 8. Yeah, I'm with you, Joe, 100% on that. And like I say, Galley is a real team guy. He deserves a fair contract. He deserves $6 to $7 million. He put up 53 points this year. Most of it was goals. Next year, I believe he's going to have around 35 goals. He's the only true pure goal scorer the Habs have right now. Obviously, they have Cole Caulfield coming up, but he's in the NCAA right now. But as far as their current roster, Galley's their only true pure goal scorer. Their only guy that, in my opinion, if he plays 82 games, is guaranteed to put up over 30. And that means a lot on a team that is starved for goals like Montreal. Last year, they scored by committee, thankfully. But some players really had to step it up just for them to almost get into the playoffs. Like, who expected Domi to have over 20 goals? Especially almost 30. But thanks for the questions, guys. I really appreciate it. And anybody who's in the stream that hasn't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And thank you to the new people who did subscribe in the past few days. I've had a significant jump in the past few days. Went from 400 to 411 in 2 days. For me, that's good. If this is shaking a little bit, guys, let me know. If your screen is shaking on your end a little bit, let me know. Because sometimes when I click my mouse, my hand's like hitting out the corner of my desk here. My webcam's connected to the top of my computer, so it may shake the computer a little bit. We're up to 52 minutes so far on the live stream. I'm going to go for 1 hour, and then I'm going to end it. And I will also be doing a live stream tomorrow night. I'll be doing an hour, maybe 2 hours tomorrow night. Then after that, from that point on, I'll be live streaming certain games. I'll be doing review videos, not by live stream, but I'll be doing separate review videos. And every Sunday at 8 p.m. NL Standard Time, whatever time that is where you're to, Newfoundland Standard Time, there will be a live stream. Oops, dropped the mic. There will be a live stream, and I will have guests on eventually, guys like LetsTalkHabs with Rick and my friend Matt from the Sim Bin. Jordan Quenzel says, I'd subscribe if there was more nudity. I'm sorry, Jordan. Man, that's a good one. I don't even know what to say to that. Yeah, there's no nudity on this channel, unfortunately. I don't believe there's nudity on any YouTube channels. Maybe like a butt shot here and there, but hey, if I could get away with a butt shot for 100 subscribers, who knows, I'd probably do it. But yeah, nice comment, man. Thanks. Just kidding. Already subbed. Thanks. I really appreciate it, bud. That's a great comment. As soon as I seen it, I scrolled to the bottom and was like, I seen the nudity part. I was like, I gotta read this question. Chewy Limited says, Steve Shutt used to be the 4th member of Rush. Whoa, so that's the guy who used to play, that was a left winger for the Habs. And obviously, Steve Shutt, yes, he was a left winger for the Habs. But he used to play as the 4th member of Rush. That's crazy. I actually love Rush. I was talking last night how I love classic rock. Because my job now, there's this radio station called K-Rock here in Newfoundland. And most people at my job now listen to classic rock. So whether you like it or not, you're going to be sitting there listening to it. And I love Rush. And of course, because of Trailer Park Boys, Closer to the Heart, the episode with Alex Lifeson, that's an awesome little tidbit to know. So when I am doing history videos, which I will eventually do, and when I'm talking to players about the Habs, that's a good fun fact to know. Thank you for telling me that. And he, excuse me, I didn't read the whole thing. He says, Steve Shutt used to be the fourth member of Rush. That is why there is a tribute to them now on the album. A tribute to him now on the album released in the 80s to the Montreal Canadiens. That's amazing. I love knowing that. Thank you for telling me that. Josh Hunt says, you going to see the Growlers anytime soon? If I make it back to St. John's this year, I'll try to catch a game. Probably cheaper than a Habs game. I've already been through 2 Growlers games so far. They won the Kelly Cup this year. Very proud to have the ECHL St. John's Growlers representing us. I would love to have the Ice Caps back here at the Habs affiliate. But yes, I'll be going to see a Growlers game or 2. Actually, where I'm working to right now, they've given out a few tickets at my work a couple times because somehow my work has a promotion where they're connected to the Mile 1, which is the stadium for the Growlers. And there's been a few times I've come into work and they're like, here's 2 free tickets to the Growlers game. No problem with me. If I got the night off, you're going to give me the night off, I will gladly go to the Growlers game. Love the ECHL. Some great players and goalies like Braden Holtby have come out of the ECHL. Sorry, I keep knocking this mic down, guys. It's too close to me. Chewy says, as for the Montreal Canadiens in the 50s, there were less of a hockey pool of players to pull from. No Europeans in the league, and basically all of the Canadians, and basically all of the players were Canadians taken from the aspect. Yeah, they did have slim pickings back then for sure. And another knock on the Montreal Canadiens is they say the only reason the Montreal Canadiens won their cups is because they had first dibs on the French Canadian players. As far as I know, the way they got Guy Lafleur is they didn't have that first pick to get Guy Lafleur. They traded to LA to get him, something like that. They did some kind of thing where they didn't have first dibs on Guy Lafleur, and somehow they managed to get him. I was listening to the Hockey God talk about that actually. Chewy Limited says, I used to do publicity in the music industry. Used to book interviews for a lot of people. That's awesome, man. That's great. I would love to do something like that. I could tell by your picture and acoustic guitar that you're definitely into music. Like you say, I love my classic rock. I don't know how to play guitar myself. I know how to play a couple songs, but I can't sit down and play anybody a tune. But it's something I always wanted to learn. And my buddy Talking Habs at Rick, I've seen him play guitar a few times. I know he knows how to play a few tunes. Go Habs Go says, see that the Growlers are making an announcement on Tuesday. They're making an announcement on Tuesday? Maybe it has something to do with the Leafs being in town? Maybe like they're going to play a little game against the Leafs training camp team, or they're having some kind of promotion. Who knows what it could be, but I will be staying tuned to that. And Go Habs Go, I'm assuming you're from St. John's, so shout out to you, my friend. Even if you're not, shout out to the Growlers and shout out to you. Josh Hunt says, yeah, man, we never won shit in St. John's until the Growlers came along. I know, but we almost won a Calder Cup. The Ice Caps made it to the Calder Cup final. I seen a lot of Habs prospects here in Montreal. They were only here for 3 years, 2 or 3 years. But I've seen guys like Charles Hudon play in Montreal. I've seen some pretty good Habs prospects here. What time are we up to? We're up to 57 minutes. We're up to 58 minutes, guys. I'm going to go for 1 hour. But who knows? If I'm free tonight, I might do another live stream. I might find some more Habs topics to talk about. But I will definitely be doing every Sunday. I will be doing a live stream, 8 p.m. NL Standard Time, Newfoundland Standard Time. To wherever you're to, whatever time that is, tune in. Please tune in, and feel free to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that like button. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm sorry I don't have any nudity, guys, but please sub anyways. Joe says, yeah, we traded for California's first round pick. Yeah, like I said, it was LA. Just imagine, Guy Lafleur could have started his career in California. Ew. And California could have had a lot more cups a lot sooner. Because wherever Guy Lafleur was going, Stanley Cup was going, baby. Jordan Quenzel says, do you think Cousins and Domi's old feud will affect their gameplay? I don't know if it will or not. I know they had a feud in junior, but I'm sure they put that behind them. But Domi does hold grudges. We've seen him one-punch Ekblad this year and blacken both of his eyes with one shot, and Domi is an aggressive player. May not boil over into the main games and affect the team, but it could affect them in training camp for sure. If they could have, who knows, it wouldn't be the first time 2 Habs players fought in training camp. I think PK Subban's been in a couple scuffles in training camp, actually, from what I've seen. I think he had a scuffle with Alexei Emelin one year or another player. I seen Daniel Carr playing St. John's. Yeah, me too. I love Daniel Carr. He was good while he was with the Habs. I was actually surprised they let him go. He was in 2017, 2018 when the team sucked. He was actually good. They didn't play him enough, and when they did, they stuck him on the fourth line. They never gave the guy a chance. I believe he had 10 goals, like 20 points playing like 9 minutes, like 11, 12 minutes a game or something. Some ridiculous amount of fourth line minutes. And I thought he was really good, and I was surprised they didn't bring him back. To be honest, I like what I saw from him. I don't know what Carr is doing right now, but I did see him play, and I do like his style. And Andrighetto, yeah, I'm not a fan of Andrighetto. He didn't pan out in Colorado like he should have, but I was just never a fan of his game myself. You know who I liked playing for the Habs when he was here? P.A. Parento. I seen P.A. Parento play, and man, he was good when he was with the Habs. The last question of the night, guys. I'm sorry, I'm going to answer the last question of the night because I'm on a limited time here. I've worked tomorrow, but if I do get a bit of free time tonight, if the wife comes home and she lets me and I'm up, might do another live stream. Who knows? It's almost 9:30 here in Newfoundland, so it's not that late. The last question. Is there a last question there? Joe says, I don't think their feud will affect us. Domi's not the type of guy to put himself before the team. He knows what the bigger picture is, and that's the cup. Hopefully Cousins is the same. I 100% agree with you that Domi is the type of guy to put the team above himself, like to not let personal issues get to him. But Domi's also the type of guy, when he's in the spur of the moment, if you really piss him off, they're in training camp and Cousins doesn't let up. If Cousins comes at him and he hits Domi the wrong way or something happens and there's a little scuffle and Domi really loses his shit, I could see him smashing Cousins. Don't get me wrong. Domi is so tough, man. For a smaller dude, he throws down. Do you guys see what he did to Kessler? What Domi did to Kessler? Like, boom, uppercuts, and into Ekblad, blackened both of his eyes with one shot. Max Domi is a chip off the old block. He's just like his father. Way better player, in my opinion. Much better offensive upside. Amazing in the World Juniors in Montreal a few years ago. But man, is that kid tough. I'll do one more. Jordan Quinzel, you got the last question of the night, my friend. Do you think people are overblowing Paling's fourth line position for training camp? Paling's on the third line in training camp, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I read out the lines earlier. I believe Paling's on the third line, and yes, they are massively overblowing it. The article I read, the top of the statement is, the top title is Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki not impact players at training camp. And then I read down through the article, and it's like, so far, what we're seeing from Ryan Poehling and Nick Suzuki after one day at training camp is that it doesn't look like they're going to have impact roles for the Montreal Canadiens in the future. Like, that is a bold statement to make after one day in training camp, after one scrimmage or whatever he's seen him play. Unreal to say that after one day. Look how bad Kotkaniemi looked in the rookie tournament, and people were writing him off. So yes, they are massively overblowing it. If you haven't seen it, Google it. The articles in, if you Google Habs News, it's the number 3 top article. And whoever wrote it is out of their mind making statements like that. But anyways, guys, I really appreciate you tuning into the live stream. They will get better as they go. I'm winging it. I didn't have any topics on hand. I just pretty much jumped into a live stream and seen if I could get some subscribers to come in here and ask some questions. And I got some great subscribers. Chewy Limited, you're awesome. Talking Habs with Rick, you're awesome. Jordan, you're great. Joe, you're great. Anybody I forgot, Josh Hunt, my buddy, you're all great. I really appreciate you all coming in. Every single one of you who asked a question. NHL Hockey News Reports, I will check out your video. Talking Habs with Rick, I'm going to check out your live stream tonight. Appreciate it, guys. Scotty2Hockey, a.k.a. the Average Hockey Fan. You have a great night. Over and out, folks.